weirdest, kind of creepiest experience I've ever had was a guy who clearly has a fetish for black men.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Just Draws podcast. This show delves into hot topics and general subjects of conversation among same gender loving black men. We call this podcast Just Draws because we offer raw, vulnerable, and stripped down perspectives in an effort to give voice to our oftentimes overlooked population. Join us as we share our various experiences, open up about our fears and anxieties, and have some laughs while doing it. Let's get into this week's episode.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Just Draws podcast.
What's up?
Tonight, we are coming from World 1-1 from Super Mario Brothers.
That was my favorite one.
The
very first one. That was my favorite. I was like, yeah, because I can get through this one really easily. So yeah, when we started getting into level 4 and 5 was when I was like, no, I mean, I can do this, but no.
All right. Cool Beans is one of my favorite games. Haven't played it in a minute, but I'll probably do something about that soon. And we've got everybody here tonight. So it's all four of us, me, Jeff,
Darius,
Brandon. Sorry,
Sean.
little raspy there, getting over a little piece of cold. So,
sorry about that.
All right, so for our Just Talk section today, or our Just Talk segment for this podcast, one of the things that's kind of front and center or at the forefront of our community is this focus on aesthetics, like how we look to others within the community. And so I know that we've all gone to clubs where we see people that are in tight or see-through clothing, stuff that shows off their bodies. And usually that clothing and their bodies and just their whole look is kind of used as a calling card for friendship. It's a calling card for relationships and or situationships, whichever one you're kind of looking for at the time. So, with the start of this new year, and we're in February now, so a lot of the new year, new me stuff has kind of died out. But I wanted to talk about body image, like within the gay community, and specifically like the Black gay community, and kind of what we've experienced and how we've dealt with these kind of aesthetic issues. So thinking about body image and the pressure to conform, does anybody feel like that pressure to conform to these various beauty ideals within our community?
I'll start on this one. I will say that when I moved to Atlanta, I thought I was in pretty decent shape. I was coming off of going to the gym 4-5 times a week and really paying attention to my body. I wasn't in super duper, fitness model shape. I was still, muscle thick, if you want to call it that. But I wasn't like roided up or anything. But I can say moving from a flyover state to the city of Atlanta was definitely a different beast. And I was not ready for the aesthetic requirement, you could say, because it was the first time I really saw men that were in my age range that were like really focused on looking like a fitness model. So it was kind of odd going to the gym and once I got a new membership and, seeing these dudes, over 30, roided, muscled up, just really just like, you got all day to be in the gym. Like, I don't have a job. I just moved here. I am looking for a job. This is what you do all day. Like, wouldn't have the time to do this. And you got a job. So it just seems like it was a lot to kind of try to conform to that. To try to just get up to the level, so to speak, to be more competitive in the dating world, if that's to for romance, or even to have, sexual partners. It just seemed like it was very important to have a certain look, or at least that was the most popular people, the guys that was, the ones you'd always see on apps, or always out and about, or even, just around the city of Atlanta, were just always the good looking dudes that had that abs and ass and chest, and that's just what it was. So I don't say I felt like I needed to conform, but I did feel like there was a lot more pressure to compete. But I didn't put myself in a position where, oh, I got to hurry up and lose these 50 pounds. Oh, I got to put on this muscle and, eat all of that. It wasn't like that for me, but I can see that. So I do feel like, yes, there's some pressure, but I just didn't have time to kind of deal with that. And since I've been here going on 9 years, coming into 10, I do still feel like it's the same way. There's guys my age that are still those muscle bound, may not have abs, but a flat stomach, but it's clearly got abs, clearly have time to be in the gym. And it's just still continues on. And so I don't know if that's just, I think since then, when I moved here, social media has become so much more important. We're in the Instagram age. So I think now that's trickled down to the flyover states and other places where, you can use your body to look a certain way and get influence and things like that. So I do feel that there's a pressure globally, but my experience was initially just locally within my own range of the city that I was living in at the time, moving from Mississippi to here. So I can see that there's something there for that.
Okay. So you're saying that it still exists. Like,
oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I for me, it does. I mean, there's definitely some places I want to improve on, but I'm not going to say run and get an Ozempic subscription or prescription for that. No.
We should all go get Ozempic.
Or we go
go ahead and get it. Everybody else in Hollywood got it. Go get
just get you a old nasty piece of Ozempic. Yeah. How does everybody else feel about that? I mean, we're all kind of in different areas of the country, so like, any pressures?
As far as like, I wouldn't. Well, I mean, New York City, major city. You know what I mean? People come here to break into all kinds of energies and industries that are attached to fame and all that kind of stuff. And we know that historically, fame has had a huge attachment, or I should say, association with people's aesthetics. You know what I mean? Like, and especially, I mean, like, in more recent years, we've seen where, excuse me, we've seen different lanes carved out for people's actual talents to shine through and to like carry them into certain positions in life, or in entertainment. I'll say we'll stick to that bubble, but historically speaking, we all understood the concept that white men in Hollywood wanted to look like Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? Like, that's what got them in the door. It wasn't that they bodied everybody else in drama class. You know what I mean? It was because of the aesthetic that they brought in to be like the leading man in Hollywood. The same thing with fill in the blank with tons of other people. So, and I say that to parlay it back to like the New York part, where like New York has a lot of that. However, I would say that compared to something like a Los Angeles, where it has the reputation for being like literally 9 out of every 10 people is trying to be a Hollywood star, you know what I mean, or trying to get put on or whatever. New York has a little bit, quite a bit more variety in what people are actually about here in New York. There's a lot. I'd say a lot more diversity when it comes to like the overall people. But so I mean, so there's definitely that awareness of like the currency that aesthetic offers, you know what I mean? The social currency that certain aesthetics offer. But I guess I say it because I don't know, other than New York being a major city with lots of people, and so more like a more voluminous population or a bigger population. Outside of that, I don't know if I would say that something about being here in New York is any different than being, say, in a smaller city or middle market, like somewhere like in North Carolina, maybe like a Charlotte, North Carolina, but amplified because of the population's amplified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say that I put extra like sauce on the regional thing, except for it being just more populous.
Okay. So have you felt any of those pressures though, being like in New York to conform?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I was thinking that those were going to be separate questions about like the whole.
Oh no, you can. I mean,
personal.
you
Okay.
can kind of
Um.
throw it all together if you want to.
Well, yeah. Well, from the dancer aspect, absolutely, because dancers we're always, I mean, half naked. You know what I mean? So coming from a dance background, and not only just like in class and training, I mean, like you're always naked. You know what I mean? Damn near. So and depending upon like what lanes you take, like professionally, like it's very very cutthroat, you know, and people are like all of the rumors and the stereotypes of eating disorders and all that kind of stuff, 1,000% true, 1,000% real. I mean, people like 9 out of 10 dancers, you know, I mean, things are probably chilled now to some extent because we know the terrible effects, but like smoking to suppress appetites. Like that, man, when I tell you the entire dance department and every dance company I've ever been affiliated with, everybody's constantly on smoke breaks. You know what I mean? And it's for appetite suppression. I mean, it's also the stress relief. You know, your entire job is to be under scrutiny at all times. Physical scrutiny based on like what you just did. So I mean, there's that, but a big part of it is the appetite suppression because people like, there's literally a thing where people get hired to fit costumes at times. It's like, oh no, this role is this is the costume. She's a little too thick. He's a little too thick. And one thing that people don't realize is that also affects men a lot of times. Like there's a lot of effect on men to fit the same aesthetic. Now, trust me, I would never pretend like we have it anywhere near as hard as female dancers. Female dancers are like berated for their weight to
females, period, though.
Absolutely. So yeah,
every aspect. Yeah.
Right. Very, very good point. So it's just like amplified in in an aesthetic like occupation. You know what I mean? So yeah, so like that's really bad, but people aren't aware, I'd say, that it really does affect men too. Like male dancers have really bad eating disorders also. Like, and I know this one, oh my God, this one company, which is a major black dance company, that I'll just leave it there. Major black dance company. Well, I would say it's not Ailey because I feel like that's what everybody thinks when they hear a black dance company. It's not Alvin Ailey, but it's a very, very affiliated company. And the director of this company, and she's known for being a very not likable woman. And I knew so many guys who like she have like cardio schedules, like she would have them running, like, and I mean, you know, guys would be a little bit thicker. Not even thick, you know what I mean? But like thicker than like just the people's ideal of male dancers. They think nothing but muscle and shred and sweat. You know what I mean? Like when people imagine what a male dancer looks like. And not everybody comes in that, not every talent comes in that same package, but like I remember her riding some guys so hard, and it's just crazy, like until you realize that it's not crazy, it's kind of normal. But yeah, so I'll let somebody else jump in, but that's definitely one area where that especially regionally, being in New York, where that definitely rears its ugly head a lot.
I know, Sean, you've done a lot of international travel and you're in the northwest quadrant of the nation. So
yeah, for me, it's like I've always played sports, so I've always been in shape, but I'm also like 5'7", dark skinned black dude. So I'm not going to ever have broad appeal. So it's never really been a big issue in my life because I'm just like, look, I'm a specialty commodity. So it's like I don't I don't worry about it. And, you know, I do travel a lot, but you know, and I spend lots of time in New York, DC, Atlanta. But again, I don't delude myself, so I don't really spend time thinking about it.
Okay. So you've never like felt any of that pressure?
No,
No.
definitely
Okay.
not.
That's what's up. I can say that I have. I've felt the pressure to kind of conform because of kind of what you said, Sean, about the idea of, you know, wanting to be a little bit of a commodity and wanting to have that desire. So like, I mean, y'all know I've had weight loss surgery. I had weight loss surgery back in 2013. So I'm going on, it'll be 11 years in March. And I I didn't do it to fit into some sort of aesthetic. It was definitely for health reasons. But when I was smaller, you know, it was like, okay, not that I got more. Well, I'll take that back. I got more appeal, or I got more looks and I got more attention when I was smaller than definitely when I was bigger prior to the surgery. And you know, now it's a crapshoot. It's kind of hit or miss. There's, you know, there's certain people who find, you know, a little bit thicker guys you know, attractive, and then there's, you know, the groups of people that are like, nah, you know, I'm not looking at that. And that kind of leads into, you know, this idea of stereotyping. Like I've experienced a lot of different stereotypes related to my physical appearance. You know, when I was bigger, of course, there was that. And then, you know, I'm darker. So there was that, you know, because I grew up in the, you know, the 80s mainly. And so light skin was in, you know, in the 80s. Dark skin, I'm not even sure when we actually kind of came back. Some people are like, oh, we never left, but it's like, no, yeah, no, everybody was into Al B. Sure, everybody was into Christopher Williams in the 80s. Everybody was into
DeBarge.
Yeah,
yeah, the barges.
the
Yeah.
never left part is like I you have to call bullshit from the beginning.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Talking
Let's go
about
back to
no, everybody.
1619.
Yeah, because that was the dig. Like everybody was like, you know, oh, his black ass or his black, you know, whatever. Like that was the thing. So, you know, you didn't hear anybody else, you know, saying, oh, his high yellow ass or his red bone. Like nobody was saying that, you know. So um there's always been those like stereotypes of beauty, you know, that if you don't look like this or you don't have that, that you have to kind of contend with those. So I've definitely had to contend with some of those stereotypes. And I still, there are times where I still feel, you know, I look at other people and I find myself comparing myself to, you know, other people. I know that that's not healthy, but it happens. You know, I'm at the gym and I'm working out and I'm kind of looking around like, oh, you know, I'd like to have that body, or that's about, you know, what I would like to look like, or I like this guy's beard, or I like, you know, this. So, you know, I'm finding myself kind of looking and piecing myself, Frankensteining myself, you know, as to what I want to look like. Has anybody else dealt with like any stereotypes related to your appearance? And then like how did you kind of navigate those various stereotypes?
One lane, I mean, it's not like body related, body conscious related, but having worked in hospitality so long, being a bartender specifically, and it's something I've shared with all of you before, to some capacity, whether it's been like one of our groups or just like actually talking or whatever. But um, something people don't realize is that as diverse as New York City loves to peg itself as and all that kind of stuff, which I mean we are, but it's still, I mean, it ain't like the poor people are hanging with the filthy rich from the Upper East Side, you know, or from Fifth Avenue. But in working in hospitality, like there's this thing where a lot of restaurants and venues view them the bar the bartender, I should say, as the face of the restaurant. That's why when a lot of times you walk into restaurants, the bar is up front. The bar is in the front of the establishment, and the tables are further back after you've passed the bar. So like the idea is that when guests are walking in, the first face that they approach, if there's not like a host at the hostess stand or something like that, is the bartender. The bartender is the first person they greet. So they think of that as the representation for the restaurant. So a lot of places will not hire Black people to be behind their bars in New York City. Now you can be from the porter who does all the like the deep cleaning at the end of the nights, all the way up to a manager inside of a restaurant. Management is often a job that nobody wants. It's based on it's a lot of work for way less pay than you see your servers and bartenders walking out with every night. But when it comes to being behind the bar, that's something that they almost exclusively, if they're not a Black establishment, will reserve for a white person. And I had done this experiment one time because I had been submitting for bartending jobs and not getting the traction. And it just didn't make any sense. I mean, my resume was gold, like, you know, like everything looked good. And so I ended up sending out my resume with this picture of this white guy. And to me, he was a very, very average looking, decent looking white guy. Definitely not a white guy who would ever turn my head in the street. But not the worst looking. No, I mean, some people thought he was a good looking white guy. To me, he was very, very basic. So that was on purpose because I wanted to make sure that the reason for it wasn't because this was somebody who they were like, oh, this man is drop dead gorgeous. We need to get him in here. So, and immediately when I was sending my resume with the pictures of the white guy, I was getting called in constantly being called in to interview for these positions. And then you should see like the number of places where the people would be so confused because they knew that they hadn't invited a Black person in. Like they knew that they hadn't told any Black guy to come for this bartending open call, or for this bartender interview, I should say. And then one more really quick story. It's crazy. I don't know if you guys have heard of Caroline's Comedy Club. Caroline's is one of the most famous, if not the most famous comedy club in New York City before it closed down, maybe like sometime during the pandemic. But it's like, it's been the staple for all the biggest comedians every time they come to New York, biggest club. And so years ago, I had gone in there to interview for a bartending job. Of course, I'm the only Black guy. And this is before I even realized the correlation between these establishments and them not putting Black people behind the bar. Long story short, we go in, we're all sitting there. And so the manager is interviewing people. And so he goes down and he either tells you, oh no, he just interviews everybody for a couple minutes. And then at the end of that, they got rid of a bunch of people. And mind you, there's one other Black guy in the building. He's there to be a security guard. All the Black people are always there for security guard position.
Right.
But so they make a cut with people, and then we meet with the owner. It's my turn. Once again, like I said, I'm the only Black person, I think, but definitely only Black male out of all the people who got kept. Maybe about 20 of us who got kept or something like that to interview with this guy. So we sit down and interview, and he's looking at my resume and blah, 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 and then just asking typical questions. And then he's like, well, you know, we have a lot of drinks here. And I do see that there's a gap in your resume. And I'm like, well, yeah, that was actually during a period when I was on tour. So, you know, that's why I wasn't working behind a bar at the same time. Like, you know what I mean? So there's a very specific and clear reason why you see that gap on my resume and everything. So long story short, everything's, I have a rebuttal for every single thing that he has to say. Like, I mean, there's a logical reason. So he moves from interviewing me about the bartending job, then being like, well, you know, we just have a lot of drinks, and I think you make a great server. I don't have a drop of server experience on my resume. Had never been a server in my life at that point. And then before we know it, he's then being like, you know, I think he'd make a great doorman. Hey, Tom, don't you think he'd make a great door guy? Don't you think he'd be great for that? And it's so crazy, like just thinking, like I came in for a bartender position, and I have been whittled all the way. And I won't want to say down in a derogatory sense, but definitely down when it comes to money, certainly
Okay.
financial, and
Yeah,
for
that's what I was
and
going to ask. Was it a difference in
oh,
yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
absolutely. The bartender is a coveted position that you make the most in the house, and so that's why, like it's this thing, you know what I mean? Like we can't have a black person there, but like I said, not to diminish it for the role, but because of financial reasons. Um, that I had gone from a bartender candidate all the way to the guy at the door for an hourly wage, and it's just like, how does that even happen when none of this stuff is on my resume? Why am I now great for to be the door guy?
Mhm.
Like because I'm black, so.
Right, right.
Yeah, and that's clearly me being judged at face value.
Yeah, did you call him on that though?
No, not at that time, because like this was like it was really overwhelming. Well, no, I definitely called him on the fact that, like, well, I don't have experience in those areas. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But I didn't call him to the extent of, like this is happening because I'm black. I'm the only black
Mhm.
person in here. You've taken me from a candidate for this position that I actually came for all the way over here, way to the West Coast. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but no, but at that time it wasn't as prevalent to me that like this was such a thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I
Okay.
wish I had known better, because I certainly would have taken the task at that point. Especially because once you know that you're not in the running for something, you might as well go in and let have. At that point, leave
Mhm.
it all on the table. And especially if there's a crowd around, you really want to leave it on the table, because I certainly have done that too. But
Okay.
I'll say that for another time.
That's good.
But yeah.
So I like that you kind of segued into this idea of discrimination too. So, I'll let Sean and Jeff, like how do y'all have you all been stereotyped, and then have you faced, discrimination based on uh your appearance or your aesthetic? And that could be colorism, uh that could be sizeism, that could be ageism. So any of those things.
If the question is as being black and gay, if I want to just keep it within that realm, that box, I probably say that, based on my appearance, I would say people think that that I'm just a total bottom because I have a nice butt. And that can be kind of frustrating, because I'm not a bottom at all. And so, if I'm going to say my appearance would determine anything, that's probably like one of the number one things I think that guys that see me in person, if I'm in like a gay space, would probably think, which is kind of crazy to me. But I mean, I get it, but just because you see something doesn't mean that it's available, you know? So, I mean, that's just like saying, oh, that's someone's a big bottom. It doesn't mean that you're going to give you a bottom too. And they don't want to do that, So, other than that, I can't think that I've necessarily been specifically, based on just race or anything like that, or colorism. I tend to not really put myself in a position where I'm known to be looking for someone that's, say, like younger or older. So I don't really consider ageism as a thing. Like in the apps, I think most of the things that if I open the app, it's filtered if possible through age, where my limiters are like maybe 10 above my age and
Mhm.
maybe 15 below. So I don't really think that's usually an issue. And sometimes it's 15 below just so I can just see what's down there. But
Mhm.
realistically, I don't think I would be trying to date someone, um, you know, a generation younger than me. I don't think that would just kind of work. So I can't say that I've have any other recollection where those would have been deals for me.
So
Sean.
I'll jump in. I'll talk. So colorism, I'll focus on West Coast because East Coast, it's not a factor in my life. And the funny part is like, in terms of, West Coast is difficult. If you are Black and you're looking, and especially if you're Black and, like a professional in terms of, doctor, lawyer, accountant, finance, treasury type person,
Suited and booted in 95.
it's like, like and you want to date someone Black or of color, it's a tough road. Even for those who are fair and aesthetically pleasing to, in a kind of more general sense, greater societal sense, because it's like, it's tough to find Black folks out here who are looking for Black folks, and color is definitely an issue. I don't really focus on the white guys. I will say though, like probably the weirdest, kind of creepiest experience I've ever had was a guy who, he's Mexican, but clearly has a fetish for Black men, and would come at me a lot. He lives in San Diego, but I know him from San Diego and Puerto Vallarta and stuff like this. But it's just like, it was just really very uncomfortable because he was always like always like on me, but it was in one of those ways where it's like, dude, this is like, you've got some sort of weird fetish, and it's really uncomfortable because it clearly has much more to do with my skin color than me as a person. And so, so from the get-go, I was always like, yeah, I could tell this is not something we're gonna explore at all, because I get really bad vibes from it. I'm not a token, I'm not a thing.
Right.
And then on age, it's funny because, so I kind of laughed when kind of I looked at the topics for this. Age, there are only two people significantly younger than me that ever were of interest. And one was 10 years younger than me, and that, I mean, these are all years ago, but ended up to be more of just a buddy to kick it with and stuff like this. My age certainly wasn't a thing for him. And then the other guy he was significantly younger than me, 21 years. Yeah.
Wow.
It's the only time. These are literally the only two younger people I've ever been interested in.
Right,
but with him, it was more.
The whole cradle.
I'm saying.
He was still older than my youngest nieces. He's younger than my nephews, but that's a different story. But no, for him, my age wasn't really the big thing. It's that he was Black, and he certainly didn't want anything to do with anyone Black. Oh. He there was a lot about him, a lot about me that he liked, but like me being a Black dude was like that was absolutely a deal killer for him. It wasn't necessarily my age, but again, they're only the two that I've ever really kind of been attracted to in any way, shape, or form like that. And one was just to kind of kick it with and have fun, and we did that, and that was great. And that was a long time ago.
Did you ever interrogate that situation with him about why the apprehensive?
Specifically, I specifically told him, I said, look, I said, this would be inoffensive to me if it was our age difference. I said, but the fact that you are Black and your real issue with me is that I'm Black, I said, that does not compute. I don't get it.
Right.
That shit is crazy. And I'm going to keep my shit in there for that one.
Yeah, and he never and he never explained what it was, because I've met somebody that's like that too.
But you have to understand, this is a lot of the West Coast. This is not abnormal on the West Coast. This is not abnormal. So, and then I've dated two guys who one was 10 years older than me. Well, I guess 9 years older, and one was 10 years older, and that was fine. I mean, I have no issue with that. Normally, folks are within around the same age or maybe 5 years older. But the ones who are 10 years older, one was here and he was crazy, and that's why that didn't work. And the other one lived in DC, and it for a number of reasons, it's like, do we really want to engage in long distance? Is this going to be serious enough for it to be worth that energy? I mean, we liked each other a lot, and great guy, but probably in terms of building a life together type of deal, it probably wasn't that serious. So it just didn't materialize that way over the long run. I mean, we've remained in contact, have a great relationship, but for the most part, I date, well, since I'm emeritus now, but I generally have dated kind of in my age range, a couple of years, maybe a couple to a few years younger, and then maybe to 5 years older.
Okay. I mean, I've experienced a little bit of like, not necessarily discrimination or I wouldn't say prejudice, but maybe it's just this idea of choice, like people kind of hide their depths,
their quote unquote preferences.
Yeah, their depths of shallowness in the idea of I like what I like. Or this is my, these are my preferences, kind of thing. And it's like, okay, you're entitled to have preferences, but then the thing that bothers me is like when they're really like blatantly, I can't even think of the words I want to use, but they're just like so forthright with the fact that, all right, there's this, on the dating app specifically, like it's stuff like, no fats, no femmes, that kind of stuff. And then like it's like you have this laundry list of shit that you want in a person. Like they have to be tall, they have to be dark skin, they have or light skin, they have to have facial hair, you got to have muscles, you got to have a big dick, and then you got to have a fat on top of having a big dick, and then you got to have your own place, and then you got
your own business,
you got to own a business, right? You got to drive this kind of car, it's where you gonna find all this shit?
Yeah, so that's when those preferences turn into requirements, and that irks me because people completely use the word preference wrong.
Yes.
And they should be saying, these are my requirements, these are my prerequisites. If you don't hit these, then there's no going forward. And they're using the word wrong. So
right, because requirements, because I actually, and this was years ago when I first started dating dudes, but there was a guy who told me, he's like, yeah, you don't live commensurate with your station in life. I'm like,
what does that mean?
I wasn't worried about driving a fancy car.
Oh,
even though I was a lawyer, things like that. I mean, I always laugh because when I did, again, 15 years where I put all this in the background because I like said I'm done with it all. But
you weren't flossing enough.
What's that?
I said you weren't flossing enough.
Right.
Flexing and flossing. Showing
Using
your whole paycheck every week.
Again, and I'm like, but you don't have to worry about it because the checks come with my name. You don't have to worry about what I do with it. So it's like, I'm not trying to, I like, still to this day, I'm like, look, I want people to think I have absolutely nothing. I'm like, I'm good with that. I'm perfectly comfortable. It's like, you can assume I have zero and I'm good with that. But my whole thing is I'm gonna give this first. I'm always like, when I was in the dating world, like I believed in swimming the 7 seas. Car, and I'm gonna kind of explain it a little bit more at the end. Car, crib, cash, credit, career, common sense, and cute to me. I don't care what kind of car you have, but you better, or even if you have transportation, now it's not as big of a deal because if you live someplace with public transportation that's good, you can get where you need to be. and they have Uber and all that kind of stuff as well.
All right.
Can I just say really quickly that I was
Yeah.
completely not expecting that when you said the 7 C's. I thought you were meant like something like you just
Like a
weren't
body of
really,
water.
Like, no,
No.
I was thinking like like everybody is potential, like racially and culturally. That's what I was thinking. Like, oh, you know, like cool, like, oh, you know,
no,
like we are the
no,
world kind of. Okay.
no, yeah, no, yeah,
And I
It's
mean, and I know better.
unfortunate.
I know that that's not the case now, but I thought
yeah,
you were saying that back in the
ooh,
day.
yeah, no,
Okay.
no, yeah, no.
Just
I
under the
started
letter
out where I
C.
am. I
Gotcha.
started out where I am now. I had a limited period of time where I was slightly more flexible, but no, it's no. Where I am now is where I started out, and then a couple of small windows of a little bit more flexibility. But I'm like, no, yeah. For the most part, it's like Black. Then we'll talk about Latino, Asian. Yeah, then we could talk about that. But I'm like, yeah, no, I have limits. It's
You have
limits.
preferences.
I'm like, no,
or
no, I
requirements.
can't.
Preferences.
Or
What's that?
requirements. You have
Like what about the
preferences
white
or
guys who
requirements.
No, because again, it's one of these where, you know, and again, West Coast, Seattle, I've had to explain to dudes before. I'm like, look, this is not, because like white guys get really upset if you don't date white guys, even though they're fine with white guys who don't date anything but white guys. But if white guys, they're like, if they like you and you are Black and you don't reciprocate, then there's clearly something wrong with you. And I'm like, this is not about you and it's not about your whiteness. I'm like, I find white guys attractive, but that doesn't mean I need to date them.
Mm-hmm.
But for
you
them,
know what? You know what that's because so many of them are used to
yes,
like their white friends dating Black friends who have no Black friends.
right.
So it's like, yeah, so it's like they're used to those Black guys who socialize
But-
in white circles. So
But
like
yeah,
they're
but
like, what do you
but-
mean you don't date white guys? Like,
But that's Seattle writ large. Yeah, that's Seattle writ large, and so it kind of freaks them out. But it's like I don't worry about that. But again, you know, kind of getting back, yeah. So it's not 7 C's does not mean everybody in their you know brother and sister and everything like that. No, but it also doesn't mean like for me, car transportation. You need to be able to get to to where you're going. I don't want to have to come pick your ass up all the time, and especially if you live out in the burbs and what have you. Because no, I don't want to do that.
You don't want to host
you.
and travel.
Well, no, but I mean, it's like I'm not doing it. And like crib, you don't have to own your own home, but you have to have a place that you call your own where you go. I'm not coming to your mama's house and hanging out. I'm sorry. It's like, you know, and Cash.
Why his mama at work?
Well, but it's just all this stuff. It's like you don't, you know, in career, it's a job. I don't mean necessarily you don't have to have like the traditional career, but I want you to have some place to go that they are paying you to show up. And that you are using that money to make sure that you are current on your bills and meeting your obligations, because I need to know that your ass is responsible. Because look, I am not taking care of a grown ass man. I'm not. You know, so it's like I look at my requirements and I think they are completely reasonable. And it just seems like it's somewhat surprising. I won't say astounding. It's somewhat surprising that it's more challenging than one would expect.
Oh yeah, yeah.
To find that. And again, it's, you know, like you know, like I say, I'm like, I'm not asking you to have what I have. I'm not asking you to show up like that. But also understand, like, I'm not taking care of a grown man. I have old parents that I'm more than happy to take care of, but I'm like, I'm not doing that for a dude. You gotta show up. Like, you didn't birth me and raise me like my parents did, so you ain't getting all that.
Yeah, I agree.
That sounds fair to me.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're taking a break from this discussion now. This ends part 1. Be sure to come back for part 2.